A queen does not hold the hand of a dying man unless he has already changed the shape of her universe. Ethan Cole heard those words before he remembered his own name. They came through layers of blue surgical light, through the soft pulse of machines, through the cold taste of recycled oxygen in his throat. For a moment, he thought he was back inside the plasma corridor, falling through white fire with the control yoke shaking under his palms, and every warning alarm screaming in a language no human mechanic was supposed to understand. Then the sound changed. No alarms. No tearing metal. No station sirens. Just a slow, careful rhythm beside his bed. Breathe. Pause. Breathe again. He opened his eyes by less than an inch and saw a ceiling made of black crystal, polished so perfectly it reflected stars that were not outside. Tiny constellations moved across it like living dust. A royal medical chamber. Bossian design. He knew that much from salvage manuals and border briefings, the kind printed for men who repaired other people's disasters for low pay and no medals. The air smelled faintly of rain on hot stone. His body felt distant, wrapped in warmth and numbness, as if someone had folded him back together with more patience than he deserved. He tried to move his right hand. Something held it. Not a restraint. Not a clamp. Fingers. Long, cool, careful fingers curled around his own with a pressure so gentle it frightened him more than pain would have. Ethan turned his head. Queen Alara Voss sat beside the bed, close enough for the blue light to catch the silver edges of her skin. Without her ceremonial armor, she looked less like a ruler carved from moonstone and more like someone who had forgotten how to leave. Her white hair fell loose over one shoulder. The living crown markings along her temples glowed dimly, not bright with command, but low and unsteady, like embers under ash. Her eyes were open. She had been watching him, maybe for minutes, maybe for hours, maybe since whatever was left of him had been brought here. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice scraped into nothing. Alara leaned forward at once, the motion too fast for a queen and too human for someone born above 17 worlds. "Do not try," she whispered. Her English was perfect, but something inside it had cracked. Ethan looked past her. No guard stood at the door. No counselors. No banners. No golden throne projected in the air. Only a chair pulled too close to a hospital bed, a basin of unused water, and the most powerful woman in her empire holding the hand of a man who owned nothing but a burned jacket and a ruined name. Memory came back in pieces. A falling escape pod. Silver blood on glass. Her voice ordering him to leave her. His hands cutting through the emergency seal anyway. The assassins at the yard gate. The old tug ship coughing to life. The signal tower 5 miles away. Her last order. His last refusal. Then the corridor. The heat. The choice. Ethan's pulse monitor began to climb. Alara felt it through his fingers. Her grip tightened, barely. "You saved my world," she said. Ethan stared at her, still trapped between waking and the dark. Her mouth trembled around the words she had not been trained to say. "But I need you to tell me what it cost you." 36 hours earlier, New Denver Orbital Yard was drowning in rust-colored rain. It came sideways across the salvage flats, tapping against broken hulls, old landing struts, and the cracked windows of Ethan Cole's repair bay like thousands of impatient fingers. The yard sat on the dark side of the colony moon, 600 miles above a gas giant that filled half the sky with slow blue storms. Nothing expensive came there unless it was already ruined. Nothing royal ever came there at all. Ethan was on his back beneath a freight hauler, one shoulder jammed against a leaking oxygen manifold, his boots hanging over the edge of a service pit. A strip light flickered above him. The filter housing hissed in short, angry bursts. His left glove had a hole in the thumb, and the cold kept finding it. "Come on," he muttered, tightening the last bolt by feel. "Give me one honest seal." The pressure gauge crawled upward. 30%. 40. 52. Good enough to keep the hauler's pilot breathing until morning. Good enough to buy Ethan another week of rent, another transfer to his sister's clinic account, another day pretending he was not one failed invoice from losing the bay. His wristcom chirped. Clinic reminder. Payment overdue. He looked at it for half a second too long, then shut the alert off with his chin. The sky flashed green. At first he thought it was lightning inside the gas giant's upper bands. Then the yard alarm woke with a low mechanical groan, the kind reserved for incoming debris over 5 tons. Ethan rolled out from under the hauler and hit the floor hard. Across the salvage flats, every loose chain began to tremble. Dogs would have barked if New Denver had dogs. Instead, the old drones lifted their heads from charging racks and stared toward the clouds. Something was falling. Not drifting. Not breaking orbit. Falling with purpose, wrapped in blue flame and screaming through the rain. Ethan ran to the bay door as the object split the cloud deck, too sleek to be junk, too bright to be civilian. A royal escape pod. He knew the shape from restricted manuals. Needle nose, black crystal plating, biometric seals keyed to bloodlines no human was supposed to touch. It struck the far end of the yard with a sound that pushed the air from his lungs. A wave of steam rolled between the wrecked ships. Metal groaned. Warning lights painted the rain red. His tablet connected automatically to the pod's emergency beacon. The message appeared in 3 languages, then translated into plain English. Royal vessel. Containment breach. Do not approach. Ethan stood in the doorway, rain running down his face, listening to the pod cool and crack in the mud. Then came a second signal, weaker than the first. A life sign. 1. Fading. He grabbed his cutter from the wall, pulled his jacket tight, and ran. The escape pod was hotter than an oven door and singing with pressure when Ethan reached it. Rain turned to steam across the black crystal shell, wrapping the wreck in a white cloud that smelled like ozone, burnt coolant, and something floral he could not name. His boots slid in the mud. His cutter shook in his hand. The pod's warning beacon kept repeating the same order in a calm female voice. Unauthorized contact is punishable under Vossian royal law. Stand clear. Ethan wiped rain from his eyes and looked through the fractured viewing slit. Inside, a woman sat collapsed against the restraint frame, one hand pressed to a glowing panel that had gone dark beneath her fingers. Tall, silver-blue skin, white hair floating in the static field, living crown marks along her temples, dimming with every shallow breath. Not a passenger, not a diplomat, something far higher and far more dangerous. Yeah, Ethan whispered to the pod. You can arrest me after she is breathing. He drove the cutter into the emergency seam. Sparks snapped against his jacket. The heat bit through both gloves, but the seal gave way inch by inch until the door side opened and dropped into the mud. Cold rain rushed inside. The woman's eyes opened at once, bright violet blue and hard with command even through the haze of pain. Her lips moved. The translator in Ethan's ear caught only 3 words. Do not touch. Ethan crouched at the edge of the pod, hands raised where she could see them. Ma'am, this thing is losing atmosphere, and you are about 30 seconds from becoming part of the scenery. Her gaze sharpened. Human. She said it like a diagnosis. Mechanic, he answered. Close enough. The pod tilted. A support strut groaned under the mud. Ethan did not wait for permission. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders to keep the rain from the cracked plates of her suit and helped her free from the restraint harness. She fought the weakness with royal fury, trying to stand before her legs remembered gravity. Ethan caught her weight carefully, turning his shoulder beneath her arm. She was lighter than the armor made her look, but every movement sent tremors through her. I gave you an order, she breathed. I heard it. Then why are you disobeying? Ethan looked toward his repair bay, 300 yards away through rain, steam, and red warning lights. Because the universe has enough dead people who were obeyed perfectly. She stared at him as if no one had ever spoken to her that way and lived to finish the sentence. By the time he got her inside the repair bay, the old floor heater was rattling, the oxygen manifold was leaking again, and Ethan's arms shook from carrying her across the yard. He set her on the padded workbench usually reserved for engine cores and covered her with a thermal blanket. The shop lights flickered over shelves of tools, half-repaired drones, coffee cans full of bolts, and the faded American flag patch stuck to his locker door. She woke fully 12 minutes later. Ethan was sealing a medical wrap around her forearm when a thin blade of blue light formed in her hand and stopped an inch from his throat. He froze. The heater clicked. Rain tapped the roof. Her voice came low and cold. Do not touch me, human. Ethan looked at the blade, then at the bowl of warm water beside her. You were shaking. You removed my armor. The burnt pieces, yes. Her eyes flashed. Do you know who I am? Ethan picked up the bowl with slow fingers and placed it where she could reach it. Someone who almost died in my yard. For a long moment, nothing moved except the rain on the windows. Then the blade faded, not because she trusted him, but because her hand could no longer hold it steady. Ethan stepped back and gave her space. "If you want to leave, the door is right there," he said. "If you want to live, the water is clean, the blanket is warm, and I need to fix that seal before your pod explodes politely in my backyard." The queen looked at him with suspicion, pride, and the first faint trace of confusion. In all her years on a throne, no one had ever offered her freedom before asking for her name. The repair bay went quiet after that, too quiet for a place built out of old engines and bad weather. Ethan worked with his back half turned, giving the queen the kind of privacy a curtain could not provide. He patched the oxygen leak with a strip of heat tape, reset the heater, and pretended not to notice every time she tried to sit straighter and failed. Queen Alara Voss watched him from the workbench with the thermal blanket around her shoulders like a ruined cloak. The bowl of water remained untouched for 7 full minutes. Then, with the careful dignity of someone accepting an enemy surrender, she lifted it and drank. Ethan said nothing. That seemed to irritate her more than questions. "Would have. You have not asked my name," she said. "Figured you would tell me when you wanted to. Most beings beg to know the name of the person they have saved." Ethan glanced at the rain-streaked window. "Most beings do not drop classified royal hardware through my roofline before dinner." A faint line appeared between her brows. Not a smile. Not yet. Something near the edge of one. His wrist comm chirped again, and this time the alert projected above the bench before he could mute it. St. Mercer Medical Network. Final notice. Family account suspension pending. Ethan swiped it away fast, but not fast enough. Alara saw the number. She saw the overdue balance. She saw his face close like a door. "You are in debt," she said. "That is one way to describe being alive on New Denver. Why did you risk further loss for me?" Ethan checked the weather scanner instead of answering. Outside, the salvage yard lights flickered one by one through the rain. The Royal Escape pod sat steaming in the mud, and beyond it, 3 new heat signatures moved between the stacked hulls. Not drones. Too smooth. Too coordinated. His stomach went cold. He killed the bay lights with one slap of his palm. The shop dropped into blue shadow. Alara straightened. Whatever weakness had dragged at her body disappeared from her eyes. "They found me." Ethan moved to the window and lifted one slat of the blind. 3 figures crossed the yard in dark Vossian field coats, their faces hidden behind smooth silver masks. No hurry. No panic. They knew exactly where they were going. One carried a small beacon that pulsed with the same rhythm as the escape pod. Ethan felt the choice arrive, simple and ugly. Open the door. Hand her over. Walk away with both hands clean, and maybe a reward large enough to save his sister. The figures stopped at the bay entrance. A voice came through the speaker, polished and calm. "Human proprietor. We are here to recover stolen royal property. Cooperate, and you will be compensated." Behind him, Alara's breathing slowed. She did not ask for help. That made it worse. Ethan looked at the old pressure chamber beneath the floor, the one he used for volatile fuel cells. It could hide her heat signature for a few minutes if the seals held. "Can you stand?" he whispered. "I am a queen." That was not the question. Her pride flared, but she let him help her down. Step by step, he guided her across the dark shop and opened the chamber hatch. The space below was narrow, cold, and lined with copper shielding. Alara looked at it, then at him. "If they scan you, they will know. Then I will be interesting. If they punish you, I cannot stop them." Ethan lowered his voice. "Your Majesty, right now stopping them is my job." For the first time, the title landed between them without sarcasm. Her eyes changed. Not softer, deeper. Ethan closed the hatch just as the bay door began to rise. White rain light spilled across the floor. The 3 masked figures stepped inside, bringing the smell of wet metal and expensive weapons. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, turned toward them, and forced his voice into the tired drawl of a broke mechanic with nothing worth hiding. "Evening," he said. "If this is about the smoking crater outside, you are going to need to get in line." The 3 Vossian agents stepped into the repair bay like they owned the rain, the floor, and every breath inside it. Their silver masks reflected Ethan in pieces, tired eyes, wet hair, oil on his collar, one hand resting near a toolbox he had no intention of using as a weapon. The tallest agent lifted a scanner. A pale beam swept over the workbench, the heater, the shelves of spare parts, and the faded flag patch on Ethan's locker. Below the floor, Sealed inside the pressure chamber, Queen Alara Voss could hear everything through 6 inches of copper shielding. She heard Ethan's boots shift. She heard the scanner hum above her hiding place. She heard the agent say, "A royal pod landed here." Ethan scratched the back of his neck and looked toward the broken window. Something landed here. Royal things usually come with less smoke. The second agent turned toward him. "You accessed the pod. I accessed the problem. That is what mechanics do." There was a survivor. Ethan let the silence stretch just long enough to sound foolish instead of brave. "Not when I got there." The lie changed the room. Alara felt it more than heard it. In her world, lies were polished instruments, sharpened in council chambers and served with wine. Ethan's lie was rough, uneven, too human. He was not protecting power. He was protecting a person. The scanner passed over the pressure chamber. The copper lining shivered with faint blue light. Ethan saw the reading spike. So did the tallest agent. For one long second, all the rain in New Denver seemed to stop. Then Ethan kicked the old oxygen manifold valve with his boot. The pipe burst open with a shriek of vapor, filling the bay with white fog. Alarms yelped. The agents stepped back, irritated, their scanner flooding with useless readings. Ethan coughed into his sleeve and waved at the ceiling fan. "That pipe has been trying to kill me all week. You want to search through that? Be my guest." The agents waited until the vapor thinned, but the clean trace was gone. Their leader moved close enough for Ethan to see his own reflection in the silver mask. "If you are lying, human, your little shop will not save you." Ethan looked around at the leaking roof, the cracked concrete, the heater that sounded like a dying lawn mower. "This shop barely saves me now." The agent stared a moment longer, then signaled the others out. Their boots faded into the rain. Ethan waited until their heat signatures vanished beyond the salvage stacks before his knees weakened. He caught himself on the workbench, breathing through the ache in his ribs from the vapor blast and the hard sprint across the yard. When he opened the floor hatch, Alara looked up at him from the chamber, pale blue light across her face. She did not rise immediately. She studied him as if he were a language her empire had never translated correctly. "You lied for me," she said. Ethan offered his hand. "You needed a better hiding place than a crashed royal coffin." She took his hand after a pause, and he helped her back into the warm shop. Her fingers were cool, steady, and lighter than the weight of her title. He guided her to an old rolling chair, then brought the medical kit, clean water, and the last sealed packet of nutrient broth from his emergency shelf. He split it into 2 cups without asking. Alara watched him give her the fuller one. "You have very little," she said. "I have enough for tonight." That is not an answer. Ethan sealed a fresh wrap around the cracked edge of her forearm armor, careful not to touch where he did not need to. "It is where I come from." The heater rattled. Rain softened on the roof. For the first time since the pod fell, Alara drank without command, without suspicion, and without looking away from him. By midnight, the rain had thinned into a silver mist, and New Denver Orbital Yard looked less like a salvage field than a graveyard waiting for morning. Ethan had the shop lights down to emergency blue. Outside, broken ships slept under tarps and rust, their hull numbers fading beneath years of dust and bad weather. Inside, the heater clicked, the oxygen manifold breathed unevenly, and Queen Alara Voss sat at Ethan's work table with a blanket over her shoulders and a map projected between them. The map came from her damaged wrist seal, flickering in pale geometric lines above a coffee-stained sheet of steel. 5 miles east, beyond the salvage flats and the old cargo rail, a Vossian relay spire still stood at the edge of the neutral zone. If Alara reached it, she could send a royal command pulse to loyal ships hidden beyond the gas giant. If she failed, her enemies would announce her death before sunrise, and the throne would pass into hands that had already tried to erase her. Ethan studied the route with tired eyes. "That whole stretch is restricted," he said. "Neutral treaty land. No weapons, no military movement, no political interference." Alara looked at him across the blue projection. "You are not military." "No, I am worse. I am licensed." He tapped the small badge clipped to his jacket. "Earth Relief Corps Salvage and Rescue Authorization. If I drive you through that line, the Colony Board can revoke it. Earth can call it interference. My insurance bond disappears. My medical coverage disappears with it." The words landed heavier than he meant them to. Alara's eyes moved to the muted clinic alert still waiting on his wrist. Ethan shut the screen off, but the damage was done. Your sister, she said. It was not a question. Ethan folded his arms, as if that could keep the truth inside his ribs. Mara. She is 22. Autoimmune nerve failure. The clinic keeps her stable as long as I keep paying. That license is how I pay. Alara became very still. The royal markings at her temples dimmed until they were no brighter than moonlight under ice. Then you will not take me. Ethan gave a short laugh, not because it was funny, but because the alternative was feeling the full weight of it. That sounded like an order. It is. I thought I was not your subject. You are not. Her voice tightened. That is why I can still spare you. The shop seemed to shrink around them. Rain ticked against the roof. Somewhere outside, a loose chain tapped softly against a hull. Ethan looked at the projected route, then at the woman who had entered his life as falling fire and was now trying to protect him from the cost of saving her. If I leave you here, he said, those agents come back with better scanners. I know. If I turn you in, they make sure no one hears your side. I know. If I take you to that relay, I lose the only thing keeping my family above water. Alara held his gaze. I know. There was no pride in her face now. Only the terrible honesty of a ruler who understood the price and hated that someone else had to pay it. She reached for the edge of the map and closed her hand through the light, collapsing the projection into darkness. Ethan Cole, I release you from this burden. You saved my life. That debt is already beyond measure. I will go alone. She tried to stand. Pain and exhaustion took the strength from her before she made it halfway. Ethan caught her by the elbow, gentle but firm, and helped her back into the chair. For a second, neither moved. Her breath was shallow. His hands smelled of coolant and antiseptic. You would not make it 1 mile, he said. Then I will make it half a mile as a queen. Ethan shook his head and pulled an old canvas key ring from the wall. The tag read Tug 17 in faded black marker. Outside, under a sloped tarp, his smallest salvage. Tug waited with 1 good engine, 2 patch fuel cells, and enough stubborn metal to cross 5 miles of trouble. Alara watched him take the keys. You are choosing ruin. Ethan opened the cabinet and grabbed his field jacket. No, Your Majesty. I am choosing the part one can live with. She looked at him as if she wanted to argue, as if every lesson carved into her since childhood demanded she stop this foolish human before his mercy destroyed him. But no command came, only a whisper. Why? Ethan paused at the bay door, rain light cutting across his face. Because fear gives clean orders, he said. And I have followed enough of those for 1 lifetime. Tug 17 woke like an old animal dragged out of sleep, coughing blue exhaust across the wet concrete, while Ethan pulled the tarp away from its patched hull. The salvage tug had once hauled cargo containers across the colony belt, but now it wore mismatched plates, a cracked windshield, and the kind of repairs only a desperate man trusted. Alara stood beside it in Ethan's spare field coat, the sleeves too short for her long arms, the blanket folded beneath one elbow like something she refused to need. Rain mist clung to her silver blue skin and made the faint crown markings at her temples glow under the yard lights. Ethan opened the passenger hatch. Seat harness first. If this thing complains, ignore it. It complains about everything. She stepped inside, moving carefully, every inch still royal, even in a broken workboat. Your vessel is not inspiring confidence. Ethan climbed into the pilot chair and brought the controls alive with 3 switches and 1 firm slap to the console. That is because it has a personality. The engine gave a wounded roar. The tug lifted 6 feet, dropped 2, then stabilized over the flooded yard. Beyond the repair bay, the salvage flats stretched toward the neutral boundary, a dark maze of ship bones, old cranes, cargo rails, and warning beacons blinking red through the fog. 5 miles. That was all. 5 miles to the Vossian relay spire. 5 miles between a queen and the truth. Ethan pushed the throttle forward. Tug 17 slipped between stacked freighter shells, its underside scraping sparks from a leaning antenna. Alara gripped the harness strap, but did not make a sound. On the scanner, 3 silver dots appeared behind them. Then 5. Then 8. Ethan's jaw tightened. They brought friends. Alara turned toward the rear display. They will try to disable the engine. Good thing the engine is already offended by existing. A pulse of white light flashed behind them. The tug lurched as the first electronic snare brushed the shields, turning every gauge on the console into static. Ethan killed the main NAV and switched to manual. The world narrowed to fog, metal, and instinct. He took them under a collapsed loading bridge with less than 3 feet to spare, then over a rail trench full of rainwater shining like black glass. Alara watched his hands move across the controls, fast, calm, familiar with broken things. "You have done this before," she said. "Run from angry people in expensive aircraft." "Yes. Not usually with a queen in the passenger seat." The relay spire appeared ahead, a needle of black crystal rising from the edge of the restricted zone, its top lost in cloud glow. Ethan felt hope for half a second. Then the scanner screamed. A containment barrier unfolded across the approach, bright blue and humming with enough charge to fry the tug's systems before they reached the landing pad. Alara's face changed. They sealed the corridor. Ethan looked at the barrier, then at the tug's auxiliary controls. 1 engine, 2 patch fuel cells, a detachable pilot module designed for emergency cargo separation. His mind did the math before his heart could argue. "There is a maintenance chute under the spire," he said. "Too narrow for the whole tug, wide enough for your compartment if I push it clean." Alara turned to him slowly. "What does that mean?" Ethan rerouted power from his side of the cabin to hers. Lights died above his seat and brightened around her harness. "It means you are going to reach the relay." "And you?" He smiled without looking at her, because if he looked, he might not be able to do it. "I am going to make sure they watch the wrong half." Alara's hand shot to his wrist. Her fingers were cold and strong. No, the word was not a command this time. It was fear, naked and unfamiliar. Ethan armed the separation bolts. The tug began to shake as the pursuers closed in. "Your people need to hear you alive." "Ethan, my sister needs a universe where people like them do not win." Her eyes filled with reflected warning lights. "Do not make me owe you this." He finally looked at her. In the blue glow, she no longer looked untouchable. She looked like someone watching a door close. "You do not owe me," he said. "Just live long enough to prove I was not wrong." He hit the release. The cabin split with a deep metallic thump. Alara's compartment shot forward on a burst of emergency thrust, sliding beneath the barrier toward the relay chute. Ethan's half of Tug 17 spun away into the open fog, alarms howling, every hostile scanner turning toward him. Through the separating glass, Alara reached for him with both hands. For one impossible second, their eyes held across the widening dark. Then the mist swallowed her, and Ethan turned the dying controls toward the brightest lights behind him. Alara's compartment hit the maintenance chute hard enough to turn the world into blue sparks and ringing metal. The harness caught her. The emergency foam softened the impact, and for 3 seconds she could not hear anything except her own breath. Then the compartment door blew outward with a hiss of pressure, and cold mist poured in around her boots. The relay spire rose above her like a black crystal cathedral, its interior veins pulsing with old royal power. Every step hurt. Every breath scraped. She moved anyway. Behind her, through the fog and rain, flashes of white and amber marked where Ethan's half of the tug was drawing every pursuer away from the spire. He had become a light in the storm, so they would stop looking for her. The thought nearly broke her balance. Queen Alara Voss gripped the wall and forced herself forward. Queens did not cry in corridors. Queens did not whisper the names of human mechanics while climbing toward a throne they had almost lost. Queens did not feel their hearts stumble when a signal vanished from a damaged scanner. But Alara did all. 3 before she reached the command dais. The relay chamber opened around her in a circle of dark glass, 90 feet wide, with a ceiling lost in rotating constellations. Ancient Vossian symbols woke beneath her feet, recognizing her bloodline, her breath, her crown marks. 100 hidden lenses turned toward her. The system asked for confirmation in the old royal tongue. She placed her palm on the cold console. Silver blue light climbed her arm like living fire. "This is Alara Voss, rightful sovereign of the Vossian dominion," she said, her voice shaking only once. "Royal command override. Broadcast on all loyal frequencies." The spire hesitated, reading the damage in her body, the stress in her voice, the unauthorized human interference attached to her escape record. Then the entire chamber lit. Her face appeared across every Vossian ship within the shadow of the gas giant. On distant bridges, Captains who had been told she was dead rose from their command chairs. In orbital barracks, officers froze before their screens. In the council chamber where her enemies had prepared a funeral statement, every lie stopped breathing. Alara looked into the transmission lens, rainwater and smoke still on her borrowed coat. "I am alive," she said. "The death notice is false. The transfer of power is false. The men hunting me act without crown authority. Stand down and await judgment." The first loyal ship emerged from the clouds like a mountain of silver. Then another. Then 12 more, their engines turning the mist above New Denver gold. The hostile signals scattered. The barrier around the spire collapsed into harmless light. Alara should have felt triumph. She should have asked for armor, for banners, for a throne room and witnesses. Instead, she looked down at the scanner in her hand. Ethan's signal flickered at the far edge of the salvage flats, weak, unstable, almost gone. A general's voice filled the chamber. "Your Majesty, we have secured the relay. We can escort you to the flagship immediately. The throne must see you first." Alara stared at the tiny fading dot. The old laws rose in her memory, cold and perfect. The crown before the individual. The empire before. The heart. The throne before all debts. She closed her hand around the scanner until the casing cracked. "No," she said. The general faltered. "Your Majesty?" Alara turned toward the open storm, toward the salvage yard where one human had spent everything he had without asking whether she was worth it. Her crown marks flared bright enough to paint the chamber walls in silver-blue fire. "Send every medical craft to that signal." "For one human?" the general asked before he could stop himself. The chamber went silent. Alara's voice dropped to something softer than anger and heavier than law. "For the reason I am still breathing." No one argued after that. Searchlights opened across the rain. Rescue craft swept low over the rusted ship bones. Alara refused the stretcher waiting for her and walked back into the storm, one hand pressed to the relay wall for balance, eyes fixed on the fading signal. By the time they found Ethan's module half buried beside an old cargo rail, its lights were nearly dark. The medics moved quickly, speaking in calm professional tones, but Alara heard only the small broken rhythm of the monitor. She knelt beside the open hatch, ignoring the rain, the cameras, the officers gathering behind her. Ethan's eyes were closed. His face was pale under the blue rescue lights. One hand rested loose against the floor. Alara reached for it before anyone could tell her not to. His fingers were cold. She held them anyway. Around her, an empire waited for its queen to stand. For the first time in her life, she made the empire wait. The Royal Medical Chamber was quieter than any place Ethan Cole had ever known. No rain on sheet metal. No oxygen pipes complaining in the walls. No freight engines shaking rust from the ceiling. Only soft blue light, the steady rhythm of a recovery monitor, and the faint hum of stars moving beyond crystal windows. For a while, he did not understand where the ceiling ended and space began. He tried to lift his hand and found it already held. Queen Alara Voss sat beside him in the same chair she had refused to leave for 9 hours, according to the exhausted medic standing near the door. Her hair had been brushed, but not styled. Her crown marks glowed beneath her skin, but she wore no crown. A dark formal mantle rested over her shoulders, still damp at the hem from the storm she had walked through to find him. Ethan blinked once, twice. His throat felt dry, but the words came anyway, rough and small. "Did you make it?" Alara's face changed. Something in her expression folded inward, as if that question had found the one place no armor could cover. She leaned closer, still holding his hand. "Yes," she whispered. "Because of you." Ethan stared at the ceiling again. Memory returned in sparks. The tug splitting apart, her compartment shooting toward the spire, his console going dark, the old salvage flats rising up through fog. Then nothing. He swallowed. "My license." Alara looked down. "Revoked by the colony board 12 minutes after you crossed the neutral boundary." He closed his eyes. The loss landed quietly, heavier than pain. Without the license, there was no shop contract, no rescue bond, no medical coverage, no way to keep Mara stable. "My sister," he said. "Safe," Alara answered at once. "Transferred to St. Mercer Primary Care on Earth. Full treatment funded for life under Vossian diplomatic protection." Ethan opened his eyes. He tried to read her face for pity, for politics, for the hidden price behind the gift. He found none. Only the same woman from the storm. The one who had watched him choose ruin and finally understood that mercy was not weakness. You should not have done that, he said. You did not ask permission to save me. A tired breath left him, almost a laugh. That is different. No, Alara said softly. It is human. The words sat between them, no longer an insult, no longer a curiosity from a distant species file. Something more moved behind Ethan's ribs, painful in its gentleness. Outside the chamber doors, he heard voices gathering. Officers, counselors, an empire waiting to reclaim its queen. Alara heard them too and did not move. They need you, Ethan said. They can wait one more minute. Queens do not usually say that. This one does. She reached to the small table beside the bed and lifted a folded strip of black crystal sealed with silver. Light. The council wanted to give you medals. Land. Titles you would hate. I refused all of them until you woke. Ethan looked at the seal. What is it? A choice. She placed it gently beside his hand. You may return to Earth with your sister protected and your record cleared. Or you may remain here as first witness of the crown, not as a servant, not as a trophy, but as the man who reminded a throne what life is worth. Ethan looked from the seal to her hand still wrapped around his. The stars beyond the window shifted, spreading pale light over her face. For the first time, the queen looked afraid of an answer. Not enemies. Not war. Not losing power. Just him choosing to leave. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers, barely strong enough to be felt. Alara felt it anyway. Her breath caught. Outside, the Empire waited in silence. Inside, a human mechanic with nothing left to prove held the hand of a queen who had everything left to learn. He did not know which world he would choose yet. But for one quiet heartbeat, beneath all those foreign stars, he finally believed that losing everything had not meant being left with nothing.